So Blake and I, we was hanging out Mother's Day weekend, and I found out earlier that week that my grandfather had been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's. So was planning on riding some riding around on the motorcycles a little bit Sunday, and we decided to go up there and see my grandpa. And he passed not so long after that. So the whole thing kind of started out of Blake really just being a good friend to me, and helping me get through a little rough time in my life, and I would have never thought that day would play out the way it played out. It just, things just changed, really, really quick. We left my grandpa's house, and as soon as you pull out of my grandpa's driveway, it's a S-turn kind of deal, with a blind spot right in the middle of the two corners, where a road actually runs into it, and I went through the corners, and I was waiting on Blake, and when he didn't come out, the time I was expecting him to come out, I had a feeling, something wasn't right, and then so I decided to turn around because I had this gut feeling, that something went on, and when I turned around, he was over in the ditch. The bike was halfway laying on top of him, and it's not something you want to see. You see stuff like this happening in movies, or you'll hear about it happening to somebody else kind of, way off on Facebook or something to that effect, but, you never think it's going to happen to you or anybody that you care for. And, I view Blake as my brother. I mean, we're really close, and just the way that whole deal planned out, it was surreal. It didn't feel like none of it was, I thought it was just a bad dream. I couldn't call Steve and Sherry. I couldn't do it. And I mean, I was tore up pretty bad about it. And luckily my parents was right down the road at my grandpa's house too, so they called Steve and Sherry and told them where they was taking Blake, and we left straight there, and we went straight to the hospital. My initial reaction to how serious it was they first initially was saying it was a possibility he could be paralyzed from the neck down. And I just kept thinking, there's no way. Like this just can't be happening. Not to him. I mean, he's just getting his life started. Things are going good for him, and he had him a good job and an apartment, and he was really starting to come into his own. And I just kept thinking, there's no way this is real. This can't be true. I went to the hospital about every night. The only time I didn't go to the hospital was at the time I was kind of working a second job. So the only time I didn't go to the hospital was when I was at work. When I wasn't at work, I was at the hospital, and Blake was in ICU, so you could go and see him for a limited amount of time, and he was dealing with a lot of stuff, and I didn't want to be a burden on him. But at the time, Steve and Sherry, they live in Danville. The hospital was in Winston-Salem, which is a good hour and a half drive. So they had a hotel room, and they was switching off. One would stay the night, the other one would go home and try to get some sleep, and then they would switch off during the day. So of course I went to go see Blake and just to check on him and see how that was going, but I really wanted to be there just as much for Steve and Sherry. The first week or two at the hospital, everybody was really down and not really saying much, just really, really quiet. And then obviously as he started to get better and the diagnosis changed on his condition and stuff like that, and you really got to see an enlightenment with, just kind of popping up on Steve and Sherry's face, and they were starting to smile and stuff again. So I tried to help as much as I could. I don't know if I did or not, but I really wanted to just be there with the family. Plus, he was with me when this whole deal went down. It's a life-changing deal, really, for everybody involved. I mean, it really changes your outlook on a lot of stuff that you do, outside of work or outside of racing that you considered fun. You knew it was kind of dangerous, but you never thought that it would turn into this. Racing is really a unique sport, and in a lot of different ways, mainly with the people you meet. When we started racing at South Boston 6 years ago, we finished third our first race, and I'd never met Steve, Blake, Sherry. I hadn't met none of them. And we finished third, and we're trying to figure out exactly what we needed to do for a tech, and here comes Steve with his whole crew, and he told them, whatever they need, help them. And ever since then, from that day, we became friends, really, really good. Me and Blake he's a good racer. He's an aggressive racer. He gets all he can get out of a race car, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of. But as I said before, him and I are like brothers, so we're really competitive with each other when we race against each other, and I still give him a hard time. My first year racing there, we had a heck of a battle for third, and like I said, we was friends at this point, but we come across the checkered flag side by side racing for third, and I was on the outside of him, and you could see his gloves was turned to the right, and my gloves was turned to the left. I mean, we was going after each other about as hard as you could without wrecking each other. But I mean, that's what it was like racing with Blake. He would race you extremely hard, but never too hard. He was there to be competitive and win races, and he never gives 90% effort when he's behind the wheel of that race car. He gets everything he can give. The whole racing community, when this deal kind of happened, there was a helmet going around South Boston, and all the drivers were signing it, and there was a billboard, a small billboard made, and all the drivers and officials and Kathy Rice, everybody that was involved at South Boston was signing it and asking about Blake every weekend. And sometimes you go to the racetrack with these guys that you race with, and you want to strangle each other, but when something like this happens, it's really amazing to see how everybody pulls together. When Blake went to run it, he told me he was running ace, and Timothy, he was running ace, and I get out of work Friday, and I was going down there to help Timothy, and Timothy's, the whole Nelson Motorsports team is a pretty big crew, so they get in their little groove, and you try to help, but you really feel like you're more in the way. So Steve actually asked me to spot for Blake on Friday, and he made 7 laps, and the hub broke, and the car went up the track, and the wheel got caught in the body, and it scraped the wall, and it tore up all kinds of stuff. And obviously Blake was upset, and Steve, the kind of guy Steve is, he's like, well, we'll just go home and fix it, or try to fix it, and we'll see if we can be here tomorrow. And he's thrashing around, he's all upset, and I just started praying for him to win that race. I wanted him to win that race so bad. I know he needed it. Him, Sherry, Steve, that whole family, they needed that. And to see him win that big of a race, after this stuff he's gone through, it went from being paralyzed to he's not going to be paralyzed, but we don't know what kind of life he's going to have, or what damage is going to be lifelong, or to that effect. And they never really said if he would be able to ever get in a race car again. And this was really, if you look at the timeline, this wasn't that long ago that they were saying all this stuff. And to see him back the way he is, it's really, all you can do is thank God. I mean, there's no there's no way this stuff just doesn't play out the way it played out. You know, with the severity of the injury, and you know, the vertebrae were broke, but he had the fluid on his brain, and his brain pressures were up really high, and that was really the main concern, was the injury to his brain. So just to really, you know, you see this stuff at the hospital, and you hear the doctors saying the stuff they're saying, and you know, my question the whole time, you know, after they found out he wasn't going to be paralyzed, was, I hope he can get back in a race car, because that's all he cares about, is being in that race car. See that whole deal happen, you know, for the whole family is really a blessing. I mean, it's really, there's really no words to describe how that worked out.